Ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment on The Unconventional Pastor, Bob Graves continues with Phil in his lovable series, Everybody Loves Phil.
Well, good evening. Again, nice to see you guys. And actually, I can't see you, but you can see me. And I can hear your comments, though. So if you have anything that you want to say to Phil or I, you can actually send it in to Joey through the various means that will appear on the bottom of your screen. And give us your comments and send them along. They call me the Unconventional Pastor. And I'm here again tonight on Wednesday night with our series called Everybody Loves Phil. So welcome back again, Phil. How's your shoulder?
Fine.
Okay, good. Awesome. Yeah. Well, this time I gave Phil a little bit of a homework assignment. We're at a stage in the process that usually goes a little bit slower because it takes time to dig in. And as a result, to do it live on the air might be a little bit slow going, which is why I actually gave him some assignments and things to do so that we're not doing it necessarily on the air and working through that. Because right now we're beginning that process of digging for memories that are what I call metaphoric memories. You know what a metaphor is, right? Now, you've been an actor, and so you know a little bit about acting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, for example, if you were acting in a scene and the director wants you to be a little bit irritated and maybe, quick to get a little bit angry in your response, he's not doing that just because he wants everybody to see how well you can act angry, right? Usually there's some purpose in the story. If you're, for example, a little irritable and a little angry, then when something else happens in the story, we're going to expect you to get irritable and angry.
Mm-hmm.
If you get irritable and angry, we see that you're in character. If you don't get irritable and angry, that signals to us maybe this is a turnabout in the story because you're getting out of character or something. So there's a sense in which when you're acting, all of the little things you do, from the mood you have to everything else, you're trying to complete the story. But as you know, you're certainly, I'm not an actor. I write some, but I'm not an actor. So you correct me if I'm wrong. But there's a sense in which when you're acting, without overacting, you try to come up with ways of conveying character building in a scene without having to take everybody through your whole life, right? 5 or 6 scenes, we see you do certain things, and because of all the other little subtle things going on, we know a lot about you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the reason is this, because when you do the scene, there are numerous things in that scene that say numerous different things about you, and we just combine them. Right?
Well, I'm trying to. Okay. You're following the text. You're doing what's
Right.
in the text
Right.
of the play.
Right. But there's a reason why it's in there.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And you got to convey certain feelings.
Right.
But there's method acting.
Right.
There's.
But what I'm getting at is, what is the reason why the scene works the way that it works? Because it works in contributing to the story, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Then there's a sense in which some psychologists and sociologists believe something that I think they're onto something, but I don't quite believe that what they're saying is entirely true. And some of them believe this, that you can go through a moment in your life where in that particular moment, there are numerous things happening that have an impact on you and cause you to think, this is who I am. I don't think that's entirely true, although I think we have such moments. I think what is really happening is this. In your whole life, there's all kinds of things going on all the time. And some of them give you a foggy notion, and you're not sure who you are in these situations. But then every so often, there's a moment that happens where almost every element in what happens reminds you of something that must be true about you. And then that moment becomes a memory you never forget, unlike other moments which come and go. I mean, we shared our first night, we shared an example of what I was talking about. Remember I told you about that music teacher gave me permission to play the piano?
Yes.
He forgets, he leaves the room, he comes back, sees me playing the piano, he picks me up and he throws me against the wall. I tell my parents, they're not the least bit impressed. They want to know what I did wrong to make this teacher respond in this manner. Now, for me, in that one event, I found myself to be a musician. I found myself to be somebody who is beholden to authority. I find myself a victim of the arbitrariness of authority's incompetence. And when I go to my parents for protection, I find I'm the boy who's abandoned, the boy who doesn't get protection. And all of these say something to me. And because I've been through so many incidents like this, that one moment contained numerous themes that are a part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So that particular moment stands out to me as as a moment full of messages about me, many messages. That's the kind of a scene you want to put in a play, because it's got lots of messages going on there, you know?
Right.
And it builds my character. The problem is I bought into that story, and I shouldn't have. What I should have done, and I couldn't have, I was just a young kid. I should have realized that this music teacher was in the wrong, had no right to be throwing me against the wall. I should have realized that my parents were irresponsible in not coming to my protection. I should have realized that this abandonment was not my fate in life, not my role in life, but an indignity that was inappropriate, and that they're the ones who dropped the ball. I should have thought that way. Now, it's hard for a kid to think that way clearly. What I'm saying is this: we all go through these kinds of incidents where we draw the conclusions as if these say something about me, as if they don't say anything about anybody else. They just tell me what my role is in life and what I got to do.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, I spent a lot of my youth being pushed around by authority figures and realizing there ain't anybody going to help me. Didn't get me anywhere. But it was true to the story. It was true to the script, as it were, you know?
Right.
So anyway, we've talked about a number of things, and so far we've been discussing how these, to me, that was a moment that was a metaphor of meaning. In that event is a lot of stuff that told me who I am. So I've asked you a couple of questions. How about some things in your own past where you see that as a metaphoric moment?
Well, there's a bunch of things that I went through as a kid. I think, as you well know, you're a musician, and I think the Beatles had a great impact on you.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Well, this is when were they on Ed Sullivan? I think I was 11.
February 9th, 1964.
And I was 11 years old. Right.
Yeah.
Now that incident, that particular night, had a great impact on me.
Right. Yeah. Me too.
I felt rejuvenated.
Oh really? Yeah.
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 A few weeks, maybe a year later, my father brought home a guitar in exchange for work that he did for
No
a
kidding.
friend of his
Wow.
who owned the House of Music in Vestal,
Oh yeah.
Zampi.
Zampy. Yeah.
And my father brought a guitar home. Now, my brother Jim started playing it, and then Jim passed it on to me. We both started playing it. So that's where I get my musicality.
Yeah.
Plus, my dad was a nightclub singer. I don't know
Right.
if you know that.
I did that. Yeah, I did know
He
that.
was a nightclub singer.
Yeah,
So
we're talking Frank Sinatra,
Right.
a lot of the classic hits.
So music was in
Yeah.
my family.
Right.
I mean, my dad would come home and put the stereo on, and all his kids would sing.
Yeah.
he had a tape recorder. We'd sing into the tape recorder. We'd have family nights where we'd all sit around and sing.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I got a lot of my musicality
Right.
from.
And realized you are a musician.
And I felt important. I felt, wow,
Something
this is
you can do,
great.
a sense of competence and
Yes.
adequacy.
Yes.
Now, when he tells you he has a musical family, give you more of a picture of it. One time, his family actually hired me to play guitar, and we did a thing at Jonathan's.
Yes.
Your family. How many members of your family were there?
I think all of us. There
Well,
were 5, plus my dad, so there were 6.
Yeah, but there were other people there too, weren't there?
We hired another musician,
Yeah.
another bass player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget who it was. Rick. I think it was Rick.
Yeah, right. It was. Yeah, yeah. Rick. we'll let everybody know he's going to get
We'll just
it.
let
Right.
it
We'll just
stand
let
at
it stand
Rick.
there. Yeah. But the thing is that we did a whole night's worth of music, and we didn't do half the music you guys sing, and they all sing and they harmonize and all that stuff.
Right.
So, yeah. And we did that another time too, like over at the
I
Blind
think so.
Tiger.
Yeah, the Blind Tiger.
Right.
Yeah.
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 And of course, we're talking family coming in from out of town to do this.
Right.
You know,
So that was a
Yeah.
that was a big event in my life.
Yeah.
And it gave me confidence.
Now, that was, of course, and it started around the time you were 11, you see the Beatles. Your dad brings home a guitar around the time you're 13.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how did that fit in with other things going on in your life? Like, what grade are you in?
Oh gosh. Third grade, fourth.
Okay. Well, by the time when you're 11th, you're probably what? Fourth or fourth or fifth,
Yeah.
And by the time you're 13, you're probably get a sixth or seventh.
Yeah.
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 And when did you get your own guitar?
Oh gosh. It's probably about 15, I would say.
Yeah.
When I got my own guitar.
Yeah. What was your first guitar?
Kent.
Was it really?
I think it was a Kent.
Yeah, no kidding.
It was a cheapo.
But it was yours.
It was mine.
Yeah. Did you like it?
I loved it. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. My first serious guitar, was a Gretsch Corsair, so I spoiled myself. I found it down at Maddie's Music. Do you remember them?
Yeah, of course.
I had to make a deal with him. You know, I could
Yeah.
finally pay $85 on it and then take it home and take money into him later. And Maddie Vavona let me take it home, and so that was
And there's
great.
Thompson's on the Ave.
Yeah, Maynard
Right.
Thompson.
Yeah.
He had the Lowry organ shop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I used to go down there and play the organ all the time. It was getting in their way.
Get out of here, kid.
My dad hated it.
You gonna buy it or you gonna?
I actually sold organs for him. You know, I mean, bring people in and say, "You gotta buy an organ for me."
Of
And they come in
course.
and buy organs.
Of
You know,
course.
I'm just a kid. But anyhow, so in a sense, we could say this was a very positive experience.
Yes.
It gave you a sense of adequacy.
Yeah.
And this contributed to your sense of self, of being a person who can do things. You know, so I mean, you don't arrive at adulthood feeling like a total loser. No,
Right.
there's some positive and some negative things, and this is something. Now, I would want to suggest that although that leaves you in a sense where you see yourself as a musician, even I would want to say that that's in part a working model, that you're not a musician, but rather you are a person who possesses certain skills and talents that if there's music to do, you can bring yourself to it.
Right.
Now, the reason I make that difference is this. Like I just read recently in the news that Linda Ronstadt has Parkinson's disease and she can't sing anymore.
Right.
You know, if her identity is as a singer, she's lost herself. But if her identity is somebody who could bring herself to that task when she could, and that it's not her, now that she's lost that, it's still an adjustment, but it's not like she's lost herself.
In other words, it's someone you identify with.
It's a
the
working
musician in yourself.
Right. Well, there's a sense
I'm
in
a
which
musician. That's my identity.
you don't want that.
No.
I'm saying you don't want that.
You want more.
Right. You're right. Your identity as a musician really should be, this is something I have found I can give myself to.
Right.
But so although it's a positive thing, there's a sense in which I would say, you know, because, you know, people say do what you love. Well, that's wonderful for people who can do that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is you can find a way of loving what you do, or finding something else until you find something you can love what you do and bring yourself to it. It's a different sense of identity because it gives you more flexibility.
Right.
So it would be true, though, that you are the kind of a person who possesses the aptitudes and the skills that if there's music to do, you're one of the guys to do it. And that is a very real sense of adequacy. But that's an adequacy that's even broader than just being a musician. Because there's plenty of things you can do just being a musician.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
For example, one of the things that you do is you write songs. It's very similar. But, you know, and I've heard a couple of songs you've written, and I think you should write more. I think you did really well with them, you know? And
I'll write one for the show.
what's that again?
I'll write one for the show.
That'd be great. That would be good. And we'll do it in an intro one day.
There we go.
Yeah, we could do that. Really. But do you see what I'm saying though when it comes to the you know, trying to get away from the identity problem,
Right?
You know, where you don't want to see that as your identity, because that's merely something available to you. You could find yourself in life for some reason elsewhere, but it is a positive experience nonetheless. Now there were some other experiences you were thinking of, maybe some that weren't as positive.
Well, I had a tough time with school. I went to Catholic school.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
That had a very negative impact on my life.
Because of
the nuns.
the nuns.
Yeah.
So the relationship with the people there, not just the
With
environment.
the people.
Yeah.
The nuns. I had a hard time because Catholic school back then was much different.
Yeah.
I thought the nuns made you feel inadequate. Catholicism was, you know, they taught religion
Right.
as well, and
It's their job to teach you that you are a sinner by nature.
right.
And what better than to point out all the opportunities that make that look like that's the case?
Well, I think they instilled a lot of fear.
Yeah. Of
Hell,
and
heaven. Well, no. I mean, just their methods
Yeah.
of discipline.
right.
They would have been,
You feared even them.
yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. By the way, we have a comment here that came in. Bob, Phil, this series is great. I would hate to see it end. You guys should think about turning this into a whole show separate from the Unconventional Pastor. I'll never get rid of him.
I'll be over here every night.
Next thing you know, he wants to get half my pay.
That's a nice.
Right.
That was a nice comment.
It is, yeah. See,
Thank
they
you.
love you. They do. Everybody loves
Thank
Phil.
you for that.
It's wonderful to be a part of a discussion where we explore the life of a great guy like Phil, and in doing so, come to understand our own lives better as well. Exactly. That's the goal here.
That's the theme.
You know,
right? That's yep.
Oddly enough, if there's something unusual and extraordinary about you, then they just all love you more.
Would you mind keep your hands off of me?
Okay.
Though? Can you?
But if there's something about you that's common and ordinary, then people can just identify with that, because in a sense we're all just very common and ordinary. So yeah. Well, I'm glad that Phil is able to do this, and he's a great person to get to know. Now the Catholic school, in a sense, that experience. No doubt there are specific moments and days and events and knuckle cracking moments and things like that stand out to you. But what did they tell you about you? What did they say is true about you?
Well, you mean something specific, or?
Well, something that you specified, whether it was you who did it or they who did it. But I mean, you came out of that feeling like what? I mean, before you went to Catholic school, you felt this way about yourself. You go to Catholic school, you have these experiences. Now you feel this way about yourself.
Well, you know, Bob, when I was a kid, I think I had low self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
I was the second born, and I was sandwiched in between my older brother and my sister. I was the middle child,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a lot of behavioral problems growing up.
You mentioned the
Okay.
dyslexia, which would only add to some of the frustrations.
Plus, I had terrible tantrums as a
Yeah.
kid. All right, and I think I can attribute that to they put me in Catholic school. I went to kindergarten, public school.
Oh wow, early.
Then they
Yeah.
put me in Catholic
then-
school
of
for
what grade?
first, second,
For first,
third,
second, third.
first, second, and third grade, and I had trouble learning. I had a lot of trouble learning.
You didn't go to Seton, did you? You went to.
I went to St. Joe's in
St.
Endicott,
Joseph's, right.
Endicott, New York, Endicott, New York, folks.
Really, yeah.
And I just had a tough time. And when I was in school, in Catholic school, I felt very, I was full of fear.
Yeah.
I couldn't learn.
Hmm.
The nuns would humiliate me.
Yeah.
I remember one time when I had an accident in my pants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know what to do. I felt helpless. And this
And,
little,
and look at
this
the
little-
environment you're in. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had an accident in my pants and it rolled on the floor. And the nun screamed at me. She goes, "You go up to the fourth grade now." She sent me upstairs to the fourth grade. And for God knows why she did that.
That would
To
be
teach me a lesson.
that would be humiliating.
Humiliating.
Yes.
So I felt about that big.
Yeah. You know, I can identify some of that. I remember I was in second grade once, and I was in Homer Brink, and we had bathrooms that were attached to each classroom. So we didn't have to go out but anyway, down there in the first. So I went to the bathroom, but I couldn't quite get my pants right. I pee all over my pants, and I'm so embarrassed. I don't know what to do.
That was the same.
Try to call the teacher over, but fortunately they were. It was Mrs. Paduta. I'll never forget her name. She actually lived on the street next to me. But anyway, and she only lasted a year because she got married and then ran off. But anyway, but it was, you don't know what to do, and there was nothing she could do either. I had to come out of there, and everybody could see the wet pants.
Yeah.
It
Well, that's
is
exactly what
humiliating,
exactly what happened.
I'm
to
an
me.
idiot, and
I'm an idiot,
yeah,
and I was full of fear.
yeah,
I was
And
afraid.
shame.
I was ashamed of myself,
yeah,
and they sent me upstairs.
yeah. Why do you think they did
I
that?
can't remember, just to to teach me a lesson.
Yeah, but what would be the goal? What's the lesson they wanted to teach you?
You know what? For the life of me, I couldn't tell you.
I'd like to suggest that it was very consistent with their message that you are a dirty sinner.
Yeah, but she sent me up, not down.
Right.
She
Where you
sent me
would
upstairs.
realize you were unworthy. It's the irony.
Now the fourth graders were kingpins.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
They were the kingpins.
And they were
And
the
if you were
bullies.
sent, yeah, and they were bullies. And if you were sent up to the fourth grade, I walked into the room, right, the classroom of the fourth
Yeah,
graders.
right.
They started making fun of me. They started tripping me. They was tripping me and making fun of me. And
So who are you to be in that situation? What did that tell you who you are?
I was a failure.
Yeah.
I was
it made
inadequate.
you feel that way. It made you feel inadequate.
Yeah,
And so you leave that situation.
and I felt stupid.
Right. And then combine that with the dyslexia and the other learning problems and the temper tantrums.
Right.
And then there's a sense in which in your social ranking, there's this totem pole. And where are you? On the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, you've got authority figures over you. It's not as if you could tell her, no, I'm not going up there to the fourth grade. And get away with it.
You were taught to fear the nun.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly. I didn't go to Catholic school.
I know, but you
knew,
heard
I knew
stories.
kids, yeah, who
I
did.
heard stories.
And so
We used to get.
Lisa's laughing out there. It was something we said 20 seconds ago, so I don't know what it was.
And we used to. They used
She
to.
better not be making fun of you.
They had wooden paddles, Bob,
I know, yeah.
and they used to whack us if
Yeah.
we said a bad word.
The
Or,
Board of Education
Oh.
was, yeah. Yeah.
Terrible.
We had paddles at Homer Brink, because back then they didn't have anything wrong.
They didn't use them for
Principal.
ping pong, folks. They used them.
I think
So
I
no,
got whacked
you
once or
wonder
twice.
why I am the way I.
Yeah. But, in a sense, as you grow older, you get over that. You certainly.
No, I haven't. I haven't gotten over.
Well, what I was going to say is there's a sense in which you don't. And you can't until you go back to that event and look at that event and say, wait a minute. They humiliated a young boy. They sent you up in front of people who are kind of your peers, but they're more powerful than you are.
Right.
They're fourth graders.
Right.
You're set up into a situation where you are really quite helpless. There's literally very little you can do about this.
I think she sent me up there to tell them what I did.
Wow. Now, What does this say about her?
She was nuts.
She had no empathy. She did not.
No.
She may have cared for your soul trying to save it, but she didn't care for you as a human being. She really lacked the kind of care
Compassion.
and compassion. What don't you think that had you had an unfortunate incident like that, and the person who's in authority, even if there's very little they can do about it, did what they could to assure you that these things happen, that you could have left that incident and that entire school with a very different sense of self.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
can I ask you, do you think there's any way in which, as an adult, some of that sense of self still lingers on?
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Residual.
right. And what I'm suggesting is that by going back to that and thinking it through and recognizing what it was you thought that said about you, and realizing that you can invalidate that, not because, well, just because you can. You can invalidate that because it was invalid.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so there's a sense in which, some people will give you this line, you can be anybody you want to be. No, you can't. You can't be anybody that isn't authentically you. But you can take the working model of you and discover that's not an authentic you. That's the put down you. That's the you concluded you were because of the way other people treated you, the way they wanted you to feel. Now, I'll be honest with you, not to have a lack of empathy for them. In a sense, they're doing what they believe is their religious duty. They think it's their job to turn you into a person who knows you're a sinner saved by grace, as it were, who has to submit to the authority of the Catholic Church, which is going to save your soul.
And instill fear.
And fear is the method that they use to maintain the bond they use to maintain that relationship. And if they sincerely believe that, there's a sense in which you can understand how, from their twisted perspective, they could do that for you because they care.
Forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Exactly. Right. So we don't have to really demonize them necessarily.
Right.
We can see that what they did was wrong, what they did was insensitive. And we can even see, and now here's the thing. If we can see, though, that they did this for reasons that made sense to them, then we can also see they didn't do this for reasons that have anything to do with who you are.
Exactly.
You were simply the opportunity for them to do that.
Right.
So if you're simply the opportunity for them to go through this thing with you to justify their religious or concept of humanity, then what do you need that experience for to tell you who you are?
Exactly.
Exactly, yeah. So there should be a part of you inside that goes, that was unacceptable. And a part of you that should be angry that this happened. Even if you're not angry at them, angry that it happened, recognizing that there was, if you can, in your mind's eye, look back at the younger Phil as the adult Phil and say, that boy was being abused by this, and that's not right. And hopefully there's in your mind's eye, as it were, you can go back and comfort Phil and say, don't you let them tell you who you are, because that's not you, Well,
you know what? You could write your own script.
Exactly.
Go back in time and write the script.
As long as it's based on the realities,
right?
Change the story.
Script.
Change the story. Right. Any other events, though, that you were thinking of that may have affected
Positive, negative?
Either way.
Well, this other nun, I know her name, Sister Marie.
Mm-hmm.
Just the opposite. They were good,
mm-hmm.
good people. But Sister Marie was really special because I was kind of a cut-up in third grade.
I can believe that.
And I always felt I had to entertain the class. So at 2:00, she set aside 10 minutes every afternoon for me to entertain the class.
No kidding.
Yes, I could do whatever I wanted. I
And
could joke. I could
what'd
make
you do?
jokes. No, I just made the
Whatever.
kids, I just made the kids laugh.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. And nothing specific.
Have you seen some of those stupid videos they've done?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of like that. Because sometimes I just sat in front of the video camera and just went at it.
Well, you know
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
I was a wise guy. I just
Yeah.
wisecracks.
Yeah.
That's all.
Now, let me ask you
I
this.
imitated some of the nuns.
Yeah.
it was great. She just let me have at it.
That's
All right.
awesome.
Okay, Phil, it's 2:00.
Yeah. Now, why do you think you did that? What was that about that appealed to you?
I'm a performer.
Yeah.
I felt like a performer.
Yeah. But it was also
and that
yeah.
was just like a preview.
Right.
Okay. I didn't know I was going to become an actor, part-time actor.
Yeah. Well,
But
it's certainly the beginning of that.
I found that. Wow.
Yeah.
This is a great feeling. I can make people laugh.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think that just followed me through the school years. It just.
Would it make sense to you? And I'm really just exploring here. This isn't the conclusion I would necessarily draw. I would think about it. Is it possible that being that cut up was a combination of several things? It appealed to you because, first of all, there were abilities in you that came out when you did that made
Yes.
you feel good.
Yes.
But it was also a coping mechanism. Maybe making people laugh was a way of
Masking
right
what I was really feeling
Right.
inside.
Right. So the beauty of it is this. What if you could bring those abilities to bear because you could empathize with that pain, but you didn't have to mask it? What would that do to your acting?
I'd be an Academy Award winner.
I think you could be, But so
Well, you could bring that to
So-
your acting.
right.
You could
So
bring
we
it.
see that this is an event wherein parts of you coming out there's a multiple set of things coming out here. Some of them very good, some of them perhaps not so good. To the degree that it's a coping mechanism, a way of, in a form, it's a form of denial.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is important. Have a wonderful ability. Oh, we got screeching going on out there. Must be the cops after somebody. Yeah.
Oh.
You have a number of wonderful abilities and skills. I would encourage you to explore those abilities and skills, but not as a way of making up for your downsides.
Right.
Recognize that some of those downsides that you see are just perhaps things that are underdeveloped and not the kind of thing you need to be put down for. So you don't want to, because you see, if you explore those things, you develop a bad relationship with yourself in this way. You got to feel bad in order to have a reason and motivation to overcome it. That ain't good.
Yeah.
It's a hug and a punch.
It's unhealthy.
Yeah, you're shooting yourself in the foot
It's
while you're
unhealthy.
taking off.
Right. Right.
So there's a sense in which that opportunity. And by the way, that's very common for a lot of actors, and particularly comedians. They're masking an awful lot, and I guess it's good that you found that motivation in a sense to do that. But it's possible that you can now find a better motivation, making people laugh and feeling good, not as a way of masking it, but as a way of finding the healing of laughter in the midst of the pain we don't have to pretend we don't have. And I'll tell you, when I think of actresses like Meryl Streep, she's amazing. And I think that she's amazing because she brings that kind of depth to a lot of what she does. And now, you being an actor, I just appreciate this stuff. I imagine that you could see a lot of this in many actors, where you realize there's just a tremendous depth.
Well,
going
some
inside
actors bring their life experiences to their roles.
Sure.
Now it's called emotional recall.
Yeah.
They go back
Right.
to certain things that happened to them
And
to
relive
bring
them
out
and
that
use them as
emotion,
triggers.
to
Yeah.
bring out that emotion that they're supposed to be
Right.
conveying in the scene.
Mhm.
So it's called emotional recall. Remember that. I'm going to
Yeah.
quiz
Okay.
you on
Sure.
that.
Right. Now, it's a useful method in that it gets you acting. Hopefully, it's not a way of keeping you stuck.
But
in
it's truth.
it. Right.
They want to bring truth
Authenticity.
to that role.
If that's really how you felt in that moment that you're
Truth.
kind of reliving in your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because some actors say, you're acting.
No, you're responding.
Yes.
Right.
Acting is reacting.
Yeah. And of course, that's the difference between people who do it well and people who don't do it well. And
But they
they're
bring
doing
truth to
right,
it.
Right.
They bring truth to
It
it.
has to be something where it's the kind of thing that you, as a real human being, would do if this was the true story that you're in.
Right.
And you do that by looking at things that were true parts of your life and evoking those moments that the audience isn't aware of inside of these moments that have some parallel aspects.
And believe it
Yeah.
or not, a lot of acting is things that you've already, that character that you're portraying, there's parts of you in that character already.
Definitely. Right. You can identify.
So you can use that.
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, because it would be unique for each person, each actor might bring something a little different to each character that is done.
Right.
And so that if somebody else was doing that character, they do it a little bit differently,
Right.
which is the way it should be. Any other things that you want to mention that we could look at?
Well, I really got involved in acting when I was.
Well, I'm talking about other memories that you might have.
Other memories.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, I remember when I was probably four or five, and my mother sent me to the store. Okay, when you're small, you think a block is like five miles long. Right?
Yeah.
So she sent me to the store, Bob, and I remember coming back from the store. I think I got like a loaf of bread or something, and I lost a bunch of change.
Oh, yeah.
I lost the change. And I was afraid to return home without the money, without the change. I was petrified. I didn't know what to do. I felt helpless. I was scared. And I looked for that money. I don't know. It seemed like 3 hours I was looking for that change. I don't know if it had fallen out of my pants or if when I was giving the clerk the money.
You just walked out without
it. But I felt totally helpless. And I was afraid of the consequences from my mother. And that stayed with me up till now. It's a memory I've never forgotten.
Now let me ask you this: in that fear, what in particular were you afraid of? Why would you have consequences to suffer? Because you lost the money?
Because I lost the money.
And why would you have lost the money? Because you were, I don't know, incompetent, irresponsible, or what would be
careless.
Careless. Okay. 4 or 5. Careless. At about 60 years of age, doesn't that sound a little ridiculous to you?
Yeah, now it does.
Yeah, right.
Now it does, but not then.
I know, right.
Not then.
Now,
why?
Now, we have no idea. Now, was your mom actually really angry, or was she understanding? Yeah,
no.
right.
But she was very understanding.
Wow. It shows you the imagination of a kid, though, and how it sticks with you. And there were perhaps even reasons why that occurs to you. But wow, because you're suffering there. But it's interesting, though, to point out this. Notice that your instinctive reaction, and this is extremely common. In fact, it's so common that I don't think there's a human being who doesn't do it. When you're a little kid and something isn't going right, you always live with you. You don't live with other people. You always live with you.
Right.
And so when you're wondering when something's gone wrong, you're the one you look to. And so the money's gone. Oh my God, it must be your fault, And so you're now that's the instinct. Now at that age, you didn't have the capacity, the ability to say, Phil, you're only 4 or 5. Expecting you to be able to go to the store and bring back the money is maybe a little ambitious,
Right.
It's also maybe a little neglectful,
But I don't know why, but that
what was she trying to get rid of you or something?
Well, she must have had faith in me that I could go to the store.
There you go, perhaps.
Right?
Yeah. We don't know what the story was.
But then I lost the money, and that kind of deflated me. It deflated everything.
You had an option. You had an opportunity to do something to be proud about, and you blew it.
And I blew it.
Yeah. So, and that stuck with you.
It stuck with me, yeah.
Now,
yeah.
Let me say something else and see if does this resonate with that. If you can't do it right, don't do it. Does that
if you
resonate?
Don't,
right.
Yeah.
Does that resonate? Is it the same experience though?
Yeah.
Right. And so said to you that was so
Phil,
authentic.
if you don't know it, don't play it.
Right. Right. Some people used to tell me when I was a young kid, trying to learn to play the guitar. If you don't know it, you can't do it.
No, you don't know the song, don't play it.
Right. And basically they
negative.
They
Negative.
don't want to put up with your learning curve.
Negative.
And in the same sense, you weren't able to put up with your own learning curve with the money.
So I'd get frustrated.
Yeah. And in a sense here,
And
so
you've
what
seen it. You've
Sure.
seen me get
yeah,
frustrated.
Yeah. I had to slap you silly a couple times.
Use
But-
a bat.
Yeah. But so in a sense here, we can see this, that, and it's common to all of us. You're beating yourself up. You're expecting more of yourself than you should. You're blaming yourself. And when other people give you a story that is consistent with those fears, you buy into it. And some of that continues to live on with you. Now, we don't need to come to the answer where we're saying, where when that kind of thing happens to you, where you're going, oh yeah, let me get I'll show you who's boss. You know,
Right,
we don't want to, we're not going postal here, but to find ways of recognizing this is so inappropriate to blame you for some of these things. It's inappropriate to blame you for losing the money. Now, it would have been great if you hadn't, and it would have been a wonderful experience perhaps if you had not done it. But it happens, and it happens to kids because kids are not as some of the care we learn by experience. Such experiences as this, that could have been a learning experience. Oh, I better make sure next time that I put the money in my pocket, and you'll learn something, and that's wonderful. But very few people take that learning experience and highlight it as, isn't that wonderful? It reminds me of a time I was at school back in 1982. One of the many times I went back to college. And there was this young girl, I don't remember her name, and she had taken Pascal, which is a computer language. And she was taking it, and she was not doing well, and I saw her she was deeply upset and crying. And I said, well, what's going on? And she told me the story, and she was deeply heartbroken. I said, well, why did you take Pascal? If this was, this is a hard subject for you. What made you take it? She said, I want to see if computer programming was something I could do. And I looked at her and I said, that's wonderful. And did you discover, is this something you can do? No, I can't. That's wonderful. I'm so glad you learned this. You don't waste any more life any more miserable.
She took a shot.
Yes, but the thing is, she's sitting there feeling a failure when she's really a success. Did it to find out. She found out. Yes,
Yeah.
And so there's a sense of sometimes the way we look at it makes all the difference in the way what we think it does about ourselves. Hey, at 5, that's pretty ambitious of you. You're one of the guys who can experiment with biting off more than you can chew. It's good. That's good. That's the way we get things done.
Oh, yeah.
And guess what? You make mistakes, but if you learn from those mistakes, then you can bite off more. And so having looked at these things in a different way, basically what I'm trying to do here is say that there are ways in which all of these incidents that have happened in your life, and we've only talked about a few of them, the truth is we could come up with as many as 24 incidents in your life that we could see in those incidents your story. We want to rewrite that script and realize that the story your script could have been a different story. Could have been a better story. Could have been a story more honest, more fair to you, and by doing that, you come away from it authentically and honestly being a very different person. Because that's who you really are, in a sense, in that way. And so, although we're not going to do this necessarily on the air, one of the things I'd like you to continue doing is I'd like you to continue looking at some of these events from the past that in a sense defined you, but they were really just that which created your working model. And I'd like to see if you could come up with a different story, a different way of explaining those events, a different way of pointing the fingers and looking at the positive aspects of every person involved, perhaps, and then see if you can come away with a different story and think about it and see if you don't feel like your shoulders kind of rise up. You stand a little taller. Your feet hit the ground a little lighter because you feel a lot better instead of so heavy. You might find that's true. I found that there was a time in my own life when I would go back to early memories of my dad and my mom and some of those incidents. And for me, at one time, there's even this religious experience where I would imagine in my mind that Jesus is the silent viewer of the incident. And I see him feeling bad about the way I am being damaged by this situation. And then I look up at him as my mind's eye, and I see he's also feeling bad for my dad, for how damaged he must have been to feel that behaving this way towards just a little boy made so much sense. You know, what happened to him that made him feel that this was appropriate by any stretch? So there was a sense I came away with that, with empathy for myself and empathy for my dad. No, but I did. I mean, I got to a point where I no longer blamed him. You know, I was no longer mad at him. I was very disappointed with the way things worked out, but I realized that in many ways, all human beings would do far better if they only knew what would really work.
Well, you got to look at his history.
Exactly.
What was my dad's history? What was my mother's history?
And I have no idea entirely. I did learn a few things. You know, I learned some things that went. His mom behaved like a queen. You know, she was royalty in the house. They were rather wealthy, and you know, the 2 times I met her, I had to meet her almost like a prince who had no right to come before the queen, and it was it was a radically weird experience. And I only saw her for a total of 10 minutes in my life, and I had to stand like 5 or 6 feet away from her. There were no hugs, no kisses, no nothing.
Yeah.
And it was like going to visit the queen, and I'm one of the underlings, still royalty, but you know, and it was a weird experience.
So people like you and me are working with a handicap growing up.
If we buy into this story that we think it tells about ourselves, but we need to disinvest ourselves in the story to realize this story is not based on the events that happened.
Yeah, and you only learn it years afterwards.
Right. This is not a story based on the events that happened. Right. This is a story based on the way you interpreted those events.
Right.
So the way out is to interpret those events in a different manner. It has to be an honest interpretation, has to be an authentic interpretation, but it has to be a different one. Well, we've come to the point where, believe it or not, we're done with another night. Yeah.
We got through it.
Well, we managed to push enough hot air out of that one. Well, thanks, Phil. You know, I want you to know that there are a lot of people out there who hear what you're talking about and hear what we're saying and are in just a very similar boat. None of us came through childhood unscathed, and that doesn't mean that we're all just damaged, hopeless people either. You know, but there is a sense in which we can break free from that if we discover ways in which we have told ourselves a bunch of lies we bought into that made a lot of sense to us at the time we bought into them. But if we sell those lies, go back to those events, and buy into a different set of truths that we can see those stories really tell.
I got a new name for the program.
Oh, what's that?
Deconstructing Phil.
Now it sounds very philosophical.
Which deconstructing?
Sure, yeah. We are
Sergeant Pepper.
Right. We are really deconstructing it. We're taking it how it came together, and we're pulling it and putting it back together. The different parts of what we're doing, and by doing that, you walk free from something that was previously a chain. Now it's merely a line that you use to kind of draw the sense of perspective. It's a parameter that gives you a sense of perspective, let you know where you are and what you can do. So anyway, so Phil will be back with us next week, I hope.
Oh, of course.
Awesome. And what happened? Bob Graves with Phil Giddisi, and they call me Unconventional Pastor, and we'll catch you on Sunday. Thanks a lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, stick around. In just a moment, on the Florida NCG studio stage, we're going to have the Cult of Honesty with Google Hangouts and us in just a moment.